Hey there, my fellow music lovers. Welcome. Thanks so much for dropping by this channel. Lately I've been talking a lot about taking sides about things, whether it's who's your favorite replacement singer, which version of your favorite band are you going to go see this summer? When I was a kid, taking sides, you know what that meant? It meant side one or side two. That's what taking sides meant. Or maybe occasionally it meant, you want maybe green beans or you want a side salad. Those are the kinds of sides. Those were the decisions that I had when I was a kid. Nowadays, things have gotten way too complicated. Anyway, I wanted to kind of get back to basics here, and I wanted to get back to vinyl, the days of vinyl. Remember those days when an album came out and you had two sides? Side one, side two, side A, side B, however you want to look at it. I feel like we kind of reached a point in the late 80s when albums got a little longer than they used to be, from the 60s and 70s and into, the early part of the 80s. Once vinyl went away and things started coming out on the shiny discs, it seems like albums, they kind of got longer. There might have been more filler, because albums usually you could count on maybe 8 to 10 songs on an album. And then once CDs came out, you were getting 12, maybe 14, 15 songs. Albums were like an hour plus possibly, and I just remember the quality overall of a lot of albums started to go down. I mean, maybe for some bands, they might have been able to benefit from having all that time that they could fill with having some more songs, but I just recall there being a lot more filler. Anyway, so in this video, I want to talk about album sides, because I think that there's certain albums that came out in the 60s and 70s and 80s that had really good sides. I mean, maybe 4 or 5 songs on that one side that just one right after another, they were really great, and you didn't want to take the needle off the record. And the whole reason why I'm kind of thinking about this now was not too long ago, about 5 years or so, I got back into vinyl for a period of time. I think it was for a summer. I had a friend of mine who he's a vinyl collector, and he was going to record stores every weekend practically, going through vinyl. This is when I was living in Nashville, and so I'd go with him, and I kind of got caught up in it again. I had no record player. I mean, all my vinyl was in storage or something. I didn't have access to it easily, and so I had forgotten about vinyl. I hadn't touched it in like 30 years, not since I was a teenager. And so it was kind of interesting to get back in that. I found myself buying some albums. There's a certain romance to vinyl that I kind of picked up on more as an adult than I had really. Well, not that I didn't realize it when I was a kid, but it had just been so long, I hadn't really thought about it. Been so caught up in the CD and even in the digital age, where it's like, you can listen to any song off of any album. You shuffle now, you can hear, it's almost like you've got your own radio station now of songs only that you want to hear. There's no connection to the artwork really or the lyrics. You can skip around. I found myself not really listening to whole albums as much as I did when I was growing up. When I was growing up, I was very much tuned into the entire album, or at least to these sides that I'm talking about. When it comes to artwork, bands used to have some of these amazing album covers, or at least these really cool concepts, and they kind of got lost with the CD. And especially now in the digital age, you really don't get a sense of that. Some albums used to open up. There used to be artwork maybe on the inside, or maybe you've had the lyrics. The lyrics were also cool. And, what are you going to do while you're sitting there while the needle is tracking through an album side? Oh, you're going to sit there and you're going to follow along with the lyrics. I can't remember the last time I ever followed along with lyrics to a CD. I don't know about you, but it seemed to be something that I only really did with the vinyl. Just sit there, the album's playing, and you're looking at the lyrics, and you're following along, and you're trying to figure out what they're singing about, and that kind of got lost. And then there's the tracks, how the album was laid out and arranged. It was almost like when you go to a live show, if you go to a concert where there's a set 1 and a set 2, it's like you've got 2 separate shows, 2 different ways to present the material. The first song on an album right out of the gate, that's the best song. Now that probably hasn't really changed, but the pacing, going from side one to side two. The first side of the album, usually, you get a 1-2 punch, and then maybe you get a 1-2-3 punch with the third song, or by the time you get to song 3 and 4, things have kind of gotten into a lull. Remember the end of the first side, or even the second side. That last song usually didn't have the best sound quality. It might have been a bit scratchy because because the grooves were kind of tighter. You didn't have as much quality to really work with. If the first side wasn't to your liking, there was redemption for the second side. You flipped it over and it was like you had a whole nother album now. And side 2, song 1, usually that was a great song. And then after that, that usually wasn't the band's strongest stuff. And it was just that whole thing. The whole way that you laid an album out kind of got lost too. You didn't have to worry about the side 1 and side 2 thing. And like I said earlier, albums were just getting longer because instead of having 35, 40 minutes to work with in the vinyl space, now you had CDs, which I think you could get like 75 and sometimes even push the limits on that. And so I thought you got a lot more filler. And so in this video, I just kind of wanted to share what some of my favorite, album sides are, and I would love to hear what some of yours are too. All right, so one of my favorite album sides was by Journey, the Frontiers album. This had a great side to it. You had Separate Ways, Send Her My Love, Chain Reaction. Then you had After the Fall and Faithfully. I mean, all of those songs are on the radio. And, this was just one of those albums, you drop the needle and you let it go, and it's just an awesome side. That whole album's great, and I'm not saying it isn't. It's just that, that side in particular, very, very strong. Escape, the album before this, was another one that had a very strong album side. Also, Queen, The Game. This was like the first album that I remember buying. And at this point, I was buying 45s. I was buying singles. And with Queen the Game, between your mainstream top 40 radio and the album rock radio that I was listening to, I heard the whole first side, Play the Game, Dragon Attack. Love the bass groove on Dragon Attack. Really cool song. And then another one, Bites the Dust. Need Your Lovin' Tonight, which was a great, great song that you never ever hear. And then the side closes out with Crazy Little Thing Called Love. It's a great side. And interesting for The Game, when you'd flip that album over, I didn't like the second side a whole lot. I mean, it's okay, but it's nothing like the first side. I remember I used to call it turnover. When an album had a case of turnover, it's like when you turn it over. And then we have Boston's debut album. Now, the first Boston album is just amazing. It's a classic rock staple. And you've got More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, and then you've got Foreplay, Long Time. So the whole first side of the Boston album is awesome. Second side is also great too. Then we got the Yes album. That was another one that I always loved. Starts off with Yours Is No Disgrace, and then you've got The Clap. And by that, I'm not talking about Gonorrhea. I'm talking about this little acoustical piece that Steve Howe did, which is just a fun little acoustic song. I love it. And then it goes right into Starship Trooper, which is a just amazing Yes classic. And then, of course, how could I not include Moving Pictures by Rush? I mean, in my opinion, this is one of my all-time favorite albums. I love every single song on this album, but the first side is absolutely killer. You got Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, YYZ, The Killer Instrumental, and Limelight. And so, these are albums that I would put on, and they were just a pleasure to listen to, through that entire side. So I'm kind of curious to hear about your favorite album sides. What are your favorite sides? Put them down below. And I have to say, don't give me any of these sidelong epics. No Close to the Edge, no 2112. I'm talking about, it's got to be more than one song, all right? That's the whole point, all right? So I want your vinyl decision. Put it down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and hit subscribe too, and I will talk to you later.